I've never been the kind to wait for consensus, though. I mean, I think I was telling a buddy the other day, he was trying to make a big decision, and not everybody was on board. I said, hey, man, you can't lead through consensus all the time. And every once in a while, you just got to make the call. But if you do that, you got to be willing to deal with the consequences of being wrong. And you know, hey, what are the consequences of being wrong here? I'll take them. Like if the proposition is we're going to end suicide, and I'm not waiting around for everyone to agree with me, we're just going to start doing the things it takes to end suicide.
Right.
Okay. Like if we're wrong over time, but we've made a difference, then, you know, that's like winning the Super Bowl by 1 point. I mean, it's not a loss.
This podcast will be a little bit different. Clint's kind of hijacked it.
Yeah.
And I love the way that's
going.
I
like your idea. Here's mine. It's better. So, no, but it's one of these podcasts that I don't think you'll do unless you're somewhat forced to, you know. Because one, I know you, and then two, I remember being a young guy. And I think when you're doing long duration efforts, and I think when you're warring against a dragon that's slow to die, you have to celebrate, and you have to program in these moments of reflection. Otherwise, it becomes Sisyphus, you know, eternally rolling the rock uphill. So you had a great idea to have a podcast, and we'll do that. We'll do kind of round
with
two
more time,
one,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to slow down and just think about what's been done by the 38 Challenge and you and what you've seen other people do. And, you know, you got 2 38 challenges under the belt, and there's stories that have been told and reflections that it had and victories that have been won. And I wanted to steal the podcast in order to force you and your teammates and those who have poured in a 38 Challenge to not acknowledge what's been done with a sense of completion, right? Because it's not over. But I do think it's important that you're able to, it's what I told you over at TCU. I was like, hey, man, you need to find 5, 7, 10 minutes. Just sit back.
Yeah.
Look at all this. Don't talk to anyone. Don't let anyone talk to you. But look at what wouldn't be here had you not put the pain to work.
And what I would like you to do for me is to challenge me and my vulnerability on this episode as well too, because people know my story and they know why I've done all these things, and they sometimes I think they look at me and they think that like for some like I haven't figured out like mental health wise, but like, man, I think God wants us to have this conversation today because this week's been tough for me, bro.
Sure.
Like this week I had a lot of those feelings of inadequacy, of not doing enough, of, you know, feeling like you said, this is never going to work, like imposter syndrome, so many of those things I felt this week. So I think it'd be really helpful for me to reflect on the things that we've done.
Well, first, I don't need your permission to do anything, so I'm going to do what I want to anyway. Right?
I know.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not, but
You're
I
not
am.
kidding
at
all.
But I do think it's important that you have those moments, right? And so let's. I mean, here I'll just come out kind of off the top ropes with a bear hug instead of an elbow, and ask you on that day when we sat on my couch up in my office. You were at the couch, I was at my desk, and I remember just looking at you going, hey man, you need to put this pain to work or it's going to eat you alive, right? And you said okay, without any real, here's what you were certain of. You were certain of, I know I need to put the pain to work. I know the problem I want to war with, and I know the number 38 is going to be in there somewhere, right? So that was, at its inception, that's what you knew as you stood up from that couch, you know, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Could you have foreseen the path that you've been on, the friends that you've made, the events that you and your team have pulled together, the camaraderie and championship and favor you've earned? Like, could you have imagined any of that?
No, man, I definitely not. And so for the people who don't know, so Clint recruited Matt to play football at the academy, and that's when I knew you since we were super young.
You were young,
super young.
You were in like 4th grade or something.
Yeah, like really young. And when Matt was going through transition, remember I was like, dude, you should reach out to Clint.
Yeah.
And I remember him looking at me, and we had a conversation. He's like, I can't, man. Like because of whatever he was dealing with internally, he felt ashamed.
Sure.
And
then you reached out to me.
And then I reached out to you and was like, and I think when Matt was alive, right? And I said, yeah.
And then I called Matt.
Yeah.
And Matt and I this was during the New Year, during the Christmas of the New Year. We're going to try to get together. And we talked briefly and just kind of said, hey, man, I know it's tough. And what you're going through, reinvention's always a son of a gun, right? Yeah, and I think all of us have the things we should have done more of or less of, or I wish I would have been more effective in those conversations and more adamant about him coming down and hanging out. But we all have that capacity for revisionist history, right? But yeah, so I got to talk to him over the holidays because of you, because you're like, hey, why don't you reach out to Matt, right?
Right, and so once he died, you were the first person who, because I was at TCU in Fort Worth, and I was like, hey man, I would love to talk and catch up with you, and because I knew that you would be someone who could help me process the things I was going through. And then we were in that moment where I was on your couch, and then you said, put this pain to work, and next thing you know, we're talking about this idea of an exercise that raises awareness and commemorates my brother and all this stuff, and asking if I would envision of any of that to turn into what it is now. Absolutely not.
And to be faithful to the scenario, here's kind of, you're not wrong, but here's a little bit how it went down. Hey man, are you okay? Yeah, man, I'm okay. Okay, no, you're not. Get over here. All right, I'll come over there. Right? Because we're all expected to say we're okay. That's the knee-jerk response to the question.
Yep.
But it's impossible to be okay when you're enduring what you were enduring, right? So then you came over and then, yeah, I mean, you're laying it all out there, how you feel, how it's going on, what's going on through your head. Would you wish you would have done more of, less of? And then it was what was great for me, and I said, hey, man, you got to put this pain to work. Like, there was no indecision. There was no waffling. There was no maybe or I will soon or I'm thinking about it. It was, okay, I want to do this in the number 38. I mean, I if I recall correctly, I think it was within that first conversation where the concept of a 38-minute or 38 repetition kind of workout, tribute workout came up. I mean, I think you started putting the pain to work
in that conversation
with some clarity, even in that conversation.
Yeah, and then that's exactly how it went down. We started talking about the Murph challenge and these different ways, and it's like, okay, well, how can we do something similar, surrounded around mental health, surrounded around.
And you were asking questions about carry the load and why. And one of the things, carry the load has an element of physicality to it because, I had a really great friend. Well, Chris Kyle and I were talking one time, and he just started working out again. He looks like a savage. And I said, "What are you doing, man? How are you working out so much?" And he goes, "Clint, good pain pushes out bad pain." And I always love that, right? Mm-hmm. And the deliberate imposition of purposeful pain, like pain that I own, I'm the author of, right? It's like oil and water. Like you jam enough water down and the oil will come out, right? So it's that concept of physicality. And the physicality is part of it's a tribute to Matt. I mean,
100%.
Matt's physicality is somewhat legendary, right? And so it was like Matt was probably at his best when everyone else was extraordinarily uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so to create an environment where in some ways you're bonded with him again.
Yeah.
Because of being in that state of purposeful physical pain. But it was really cool to see how it all kind of came together relatively quickly. And with a 38 as a symbolic thing. 38, I remember telling you 38 is a football player's number, right? Because,
for sure.
because it's not like 34 Walter Payton, 51 Dick Butkus, 88 Mike Irvin. It's 38. It's like, that's a dude who wants to play football so much. Like, man, all we got is 38. Like, I got it. I'll take it, right?
Right.
I mean, there's some wonderful 38s out there. There's some, famous ones. And, Larry Zonker was 39. But 38 is just a guy who loves football's number. He doesn't care what number you give him. He just wants to play.
And
right?
I think if it was any other number, it would not be the 37 challenge. Doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, there's symmetry to it, man.
The 39's too many reps.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and the beautiful thing, even as we talk about right now, like there's symmetry to 38. And so it was really cool to watch how the thing was kind of coalescing in your head, and then how quickly it was for you to go to the prop. I mean, I watched you in the very early days go from being worried about having, champions, teammates, advocates,
right,
to stewarding all the champions, teammates, and advocates. It's the better problem to have,
right?
But the way to stewardship's challenging, right? But it was awesome to watch you go from, man, how am I going to pull this off, to, man, what do I do with this amazing person that wants to help, and all these other things. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fair for you to. And I think that's always how you're doing something God wants you to do, is when you have these periodic seasons of reflection. It's more than you could have ever done on your own, right? And I think you can sit there very comfortably knowing that this is more than you maybe had imagined.
Yeah, and I will say that I think the mission is so important, and that's why we have so many champions.
And it's
now.
Universal.
Yeah, and it really is. And it's because vulnerability and suffering with other people, right? And everyone is impacted by mental health, and that's the reason why it's moving at the pace it is, because it's like people who, no matter who you are, you need this, because vulnerability and talking to someone about your emotions, it helps you in every aspect of your life. And I think that people, once they experience it and experience the challenge and experience someone like yourself going up there and speaking on the importance of vulnerability, and then suffering with people who have been through so much, like, it just creates this community.
Well, it's physics, at the end of the day. And I think I told you this too. I don't remember, but one of the things I've said this for years, and I think I said it to you, but I'm not sure. But I know I've said it to my daughters. And I tell them, like, hey, vulnerability is like bleeding down pressure. Like, water is the most powerful force in all of nature, right? You can cut with it, you can do all these other things, and water is always going to win, right? So water and emotions for me are kind of an interesting analogy, because, water's going to get out, and it's either going to get out as steam, and you're going to isolate, pressure's going to build up, and you're just going to cook off, right? Or it's going to be ice. You're just going to freeze up and all stuff. Or you can dose it out as water, which is vulnerability, right?
Right.
So it's like relieving the pressure off the system by dripping out the water that's pushing up against and redlining the seams of your humanity, right? And that's what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is bleeding down that pressure that's going to produce a bad effect if it's not treated.
Right. So when you hear the word vulnerability, like, how would you, obviously you just gave that amazing visual picture of it, but how would you define it if you were to give vulnerability
so for me, the word vulnerability and authenticity are, I don't know if Webster's would say they're synonyms, but to me they are, right? I mean, they're parallel, right? Authenticity is what you call vulnerability when you're not scared.
Right.
When you're scared, you call it vulnerability.
Yeah.
When you're not scared, it's called authenticity, right? So there may be English professors all across the United States rolling their eyes.
Who cares?
But, yeah. But I mean, at least for me, like, it's authenticity and vulnerability are synonyms, right? And again, I'll just say it again. I think authenticity is what you call vulnerability when you're not scared of what other people think as much, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I will say that with being authentic, and if we're using them as synonyms, right? Because I could you're not afraid of being vulnerable anymore. I'm not.
Not anymore.
I'm not.
Well, I'm as much.
Right. That's a good
much.
point.
I think it's disingenuous to say that. Here's what I tell you: I'm not as concerned about being authentic about as many things as anymore. I mean, there are still those dragons you're trying to slay all the time, right? But what I've found is the freedom and the companionship that comes. I mean, very rarely you're the only person feeling something. And the authentic person is the one that gives everybody else permission to feel it out loud too, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think I was wrong in saying that you're not afraid to show vulnerability anymore, because I think that you always are and you always will be. I always am. Sure. I always am as well, but we understand how much it helps. And you always get that uncomfortable feeling in your gut, right?
Yeah, man.
Before showing
vulnerability. That's a fear. I mean, that's a phenomenon. You know, it's like, hey, I'm about to tell everybody something I'm afraid of, and you crack that ramp at 20,000 feet and you're about to jump out. Like, that's sincere. Like, the amygdala is doing the same thing regardless of which one it is, right? So there's the physiology of fear, and you got to work through it. But, I think it's like burdening yourself. Like, every unshared secret is two things. One, it's a disadvantage to anybody who could have learned from you. Like, if I let you hit the thing that I hit, if you have any of my scars, then one of two things happen. Either I was a coward, I didn't tell you about them, or you're a meathead because I told you did it anyway.
Right, yeah.
Which I have lots of those. I have a lot of scars where guys like, hey, Clint, if you do this is what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm Clint Bruce. And then I come back later and was like, hey, remember that thing? Remember that thing you're just going to happen? Like, apparently being Clint Bruce doesn't matter at all. If anything, it's worse, right? So, but one of the things I was telling I think I've said this to you, and I said it to another guy earlier today. I said, shame is the shovel that Satan will use to bury you. And regret's different. Like, for me, regret is not a bad word, right? Regret is mining that mistake for every ounce of value possible. All the I wish I would have, I wish I wouldn't have, never again, always, right? But as measured in time, every second past that extraction of value is shame. And time is the one thing we'll all have the same amount of, right? And so shame is like the reckless use of that which you'll never get back on. When I use time, when I go past that moment of regret and I just marinate and fixate on that thing I wish I would have done differently, that I articulate that as shame, and it's irrecoverable, right? And the biggest thing I have with that is we miss people. You miss people, I miss people. Everybody watching this misses people, right? And I just feel like one of the worst things we can ever do is waste time that those we love and miss no longer have. Mm. And when you look at shame as a waste of time, then it begins to be very significant.
Right.
So that 5 seconds I feel where I'm not, where I'm marinating on this thing I've already learned from, I don't get that 5 seconds back. Mm. And what I would do to have 5 more seconds with my dad, right?
Right.
So for me, authenticity, vulnerability, it's kind of freedom, and it's unfettered. It's like taking the shackles off. And so I'm not a gifted runner to begin with. I know everyone watching this is like, that man is a gazelle.
Yeah, he's an ultra marathon runner.
Downhill, I'll smoke most people on a downhill run, right? Gravity is my friend. But it's like running with ankle weights when you could just take them off.
Right.
So there's an element of freedom.
So we were talking about telling stories about the things I've realized, right? So it's the perfect time to tell this story. So it was like a Tuesday night, and it was about 7:00, and I had a long day, man. And
like this last Tuesday night?
No, this was
a Tuesday night.
Yeah, this was a Tuesday night, but not long ago at all. It was actually between the 38 challenge in Dallas and between the 38 challenge in St. Louis.
Oh yeah.
So I was like,
that's prime for attack right there.
So I was like, dude, I was burnt out, man.
Sure.
And I was so tired, and I was just moved down to Austin, and it was late at night, and I like could barely get the energy to walk my dog downstairs to take him out to the dog park. Mm-hmm. And we went downstairs, we went out to the dog park, and then we went outside, and it was me and this other guy there. He was walking his dog. And I had my hood up, in a sweatshirt in the middle of Texas in the summer. So that's, it was a long day.
Yeah.
Had my headphones in, had my hat forward. I was like, I did not want to talk to anyone right now. Go down to the dog park, see this guy with his dog. We make eye contact. You know me. I'm going to say something to him.
Yeah.
Say, hey, man.
Now it's weird.
Yeah.
Now it's weird if I don't.
Exactly. Exactly. So I say, hey,
I
man.
think there's like a whole Seinfeld episode on that. Like, I got to say something.
You got to.
Just look at you.
Yeah. And I was like, say, hey, man, like, how's it going?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that question. I hate the surface level. And that's exactly what I was doing.
Especially at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like.
How do you think it's going? It's 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Right. I was like, hey, like, I do. It wasn't 2 a.m., but it was late.
Yeah.
But it was like, I was asking as a service level question.
Sure.
And he goes, hey, what's up? We get to talking a little bit. He goes, I said, what brings you down to Austin? What do you do? And he tells me what he does. And then he says, well, what do you do? I said, again, don't want to have this conversation. So I go, work for a nonprofit. And he goes, oh, cool. Like, what is that? I was like, we do suicide prevention. He goes, oh. He goes, like, for just people? I was like, we do veteran suicide prevention, but yeah, we work with all types of people. And he just stops, and he goes, he got really uncomfortable, and he goes, just long silence, and he goes, I could see him physically get uncomfortable. He goes, I know what it's like. So fast forward to that Sunday before this Tuesday, I was listening to a sermon, and the whole message on this sermon was to allow God to slow you down.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can be more
of use.
Right. So you can be more of use, and so you can love people more fully. And I thought back to that, and I was like, I do not want to do this vulnerability shit today. Right. I was like, not today, man. Like, I do not.
Working hour stuff, man.
Yeah. I was like, I do not want to do this vulnerability shit. I was like screw being vulnerable. Like, I do not want to. But I remembered back to that sermon, and I was like, there's a reason why I prayed this prayer this morning.
Yeah. And
God wants me to ask this guy why. And so I said, how do you know what it's like? Mm-hmm. Like, why does this mean a lot to you? Turns out that his best friend 2 years before, he was a ranger and had taken his life. And this guy, I was the first person he'd ever talked about it.
Wow.
And when I tell you, because we talked about how uncomfortable it is to show vulnerability.
Yeah, man.
I mean, this guy was...
It's palpable.
Yeah, like literally, like I literally thought like he might have been having a heart attack. Like he was holding his stomach. He was like, I can't do it. And I was like, dude, you can do it. And he looks at me, he goes, how can you talk about this? Like, how, like, this is so hard for me.
Yeah.
And this is the first time where I'd ever seen being vulnerable. Like, I could see someone needing to let out
like
so...
the physical manifestation.
It was the physical manifestation of him holding in something for so long that he just needed to let out. And I was just... At late at night, my previous mindset turned to complete passion.
Sure.
And I was like, man, like, he goes, how can you do this? Like, how are you? Why are you so strong? I said, dude, I'm not. Like, I said, we are the same, brother. The fact is, I've just done it a lot.
Yeah.
And I just talk about it a lot.
I think
more.
I told you one time, like, it doesn't get easier; it does get better.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want missing my dad to be easier. I just want to get better at missing my dad.
Right.
Like, I don't want to miss my dad less. I just want to be better at missing my dad. I don't want to miss these dudes that were in Matt's and my brotherhood less. I just want to miss them better, right?
Exactly. And that's in talking about it.
Yeah.
And asking for help when you need it, and having people who have the same shared experiences or similar experiences. That's how it gets better.
100%. There's this prayer. I think it's 2 Chronicles 20. I think it's like 5 or something. I could be wrong, but there's a King Jehoshaphat. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Jehoshaphat, something like that.
Also not a historian.
Yeah, but he's a king. He's a king of Judah, and I mean, they're surrounded on both sides, and there's people around him. And this was his prayer, right? And the tremendous burden of I'm supposed to have an answer. I'm the leader, right? That's what you always feel all the time when you're the leader. And his prayer was this, in front of all those people: God, I don't know what to do. Like, out loud in front of that. Right. God, I don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. You want to talk about vulnerability? It's just like, hey, you're king. You're supposed to be in charge. And his prayer was, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna declare it in front of everyone. right? I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you. And if you read through the rest of the story, he didn't lose the favor, loyalty, trust, affection of any of his people, right? And how many times do they not know what to do? And everybody's a leader at some level of the ecosystem, right? And it's okay to not have an answer sometimes, right? If anything, that's the best way to get to an answer, right? Because either there isn't one, or somebody has it, or you're going to come up with it with somebody else, right? But I don't know, right?
And so, question for you: so, how, as being an incredible mentor and leader, how does vulnerability play into being a good leader?
Oh man, let me tell you what. I've been incredibly blessed to be around leaders that never really acted like they knew everything. There's perfect people make me nervous because I'm not. I don't like being around perfect people. It makes me feel less than, right?
Yeah.
So when a leader is like, man, I don't know how to do this, what would you do? It doesn't make me question. It makes me want to be around them more because now I know I'm needed, right? So I just, as much as I appreciated the humanity of the people that have been around me that I've learned from, because you give me permission to be imperfect too. I've tried to be that way around other people. I've tried to live out loud and show the failings in such a way that the person who thinks they're the only one that, oh man, Clint Russell's there too. Like, yeah, bro, like 100%. So I don't know, man. My father was like that, and the leaders and warriors and coaches and athletes I've been around most that in my mind have been the most successful in an enduring way. There's a difference between being successful and then being successful in an enduring way when you're successful over and over again. One of the qualities they've always had is humility, authenticity, and curiosity, right? So it's the hack to sustain performance is humility, authenticity, and curiosity, right? And I've just never, it's one of those behaviors I've seen modeled
right
so consistently and so significantly in the people I admire the most that you got to incorporate into how you do things too.
And I think that those three words talk about synonyms. I think if you add them together, that would be, when people think of vulnerability, a lot of the times they think of those three words. And if you add them together, I mean,
that's the process. Like if we were to do a math equation, which is super scary, if I'm gonna, humility equals vulnerability plus authenticity plus curiosity, right? And, it's simple math, but that's what it adds up to when you do those three things, in my experience.
Right.
Not exclusively. There's probably some other things there that we're missing, or maybe better ways to describe it. But when you have humility, authenticity, and curiosity, one, you're facilitating an environment where people can be vulnerable, and then two, you're doing it yourself.
100%.
If it's me, it's gonna be simple math, man. It's just be pluses and minuses.
It's the only way to do it.
No square roots, none of the squiggly divide things.
Right. Yeah. There's an equation that I'm trying to figure out, which is like it's along the same path. And it's right now, a lot of people view vulnerability equals weakness, right? But that's not the case. So we have to debunk that. So sorry. Yeah. People
they associate
vulnerability with weakness. Yeah, so vulnerability equals weakness, right? But what is strength? When I think of strength, I think of protecting, right? You're protecting other people. You're protecting your beliefs. You're protecting you're protecting yourself. Yeah. When I think of being strong, right?
Well, think about it. If we're doing the word association game, right? Do you think strength and courage are associated with each other?
Yeah.
Strength, courage, right?
Yeah.
What is courage? It's action in the face of fear.
Right.
So therefore, the person that doesn't act in the face of fear isn't demonstrating courage, therefore isn't strong.
Exactly.
I mean, that's courage is action in the face of fear.
And then if
you're not doing something because you're afraid of it, that's not courageous, therefore it's not strong.
Correct. And showing that act of courage, whether it be seeking help, whether it be admitting that you don't know something, whether it be having a hard conversation, that all is courage.
It's courage.
And if courage,
therefore it's strong.
therefore if vulnerability equals courage, then vulnerability also equals strength.
It's a simple math.
Boom. We just did it. Just we'll write that on a whiteboard.
Write it down.
And then we'll sell it to mathematicians. I wanted to go back to a point we were talking about. I don't know if we got it on before we started, but
this is when I was yelling at Lucas about talking bad about all my technology
when Lucas,
in here.
Yeah, when Lucas is shitting on all your
I know.
gear.
I was like, it's the mic, man. Like the voice makes the mic, not the mic makes the man.
But one of the things we talked about,
I think I was much ruder than that. Like, I was lovingly like.
He's great at what he does, but one of the things we were talking about is the fact that what we're striving towards, this dragon as you call it,
mm-hmm.
like it's not like it's never gonna happen, right? Like there's like we won't live in a society.
It's utopia.
Exactly.
It's Camelot, right?
Right.
Maybe.
It's
I think we could give ourselves permission that we could one day end the phenomenon of suicide, right? I think it's encouraging to think that, and I don't think we're wise enough to be able to say it would never happen, right? So
good point.
But it is going to be a long duration effort to try to get there, right? So, and because it is so, we have to create these moments of reflection and celebration.
Exactly, and going back to those reflection and celebration, I think that the reason why the 30-day challenge is what it is, mm-hmm. and why it will be what it will be is because there's not an end result, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think like there's nothing when people ask what will it turn into, what could it turn into, where is it at now? It's like we don't know because we have to strive. That is my goal, is to strive to a society where suicide doesn't exist. Whether mm-hmm. that's possible or not, we don't know. But you better believe that every single day.
I'm not gonna cede that ridgeline, right? Exactly. I'll acknowledge the audacity, the endeavor, but you're gonna have to prove to me that we're wrong. But and until then, that's the end state,
right? And a lot of times when people say, I'll tell them about what we do, what mm-hmm. our mission is, mm-hmm. to eliminate suicide through challenging the stigma associated with showing vulnerability and mm-hmm. seeking help. Almost every response is the same, and they say, "Hell yeah, I love that, but also good luck." Because like it's so ingrained into, and that it's always acknowledged that it's so needed.
Yeah. I've never been the kind to wait for consensus, though. I mean, I think I was telling a buddy the other day, he was trying to make a big decision, and not everybody was on board. I said, hey, man, you can't lead through consensus all the time. And every once in a while, you just got to make the call. But if you do that, you got to be willing to deal with the consequences of being wrong. And hey, what are the consequences of being wrong here? I'll take them. Like if the proposition is we're going to end suicide, and I'm not waiting around for everyone to agree with me, we're just going to start doing the things it takes to end suicide.
Right.
Okay. Like if we're wrong over time, but we've made a difference, then that's like winning the Super Bowl by 1 point. I mean, it's not a loss, right?
Exactly.
And you're accountable for the effort of your days, not necessarily the outcome of your days.
Mm-hmm.
What you did with your time and how you try to use it and what you try to improve. It's not Rubik's Cube, right? You don't solve the puzzle and I'm done, right? It's like you got to pick these enduring, undying efforts and just be willing to war with it every day, knowing that you'll maybe never see the outcome personally, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's something, as I mentioned earlier, like that's something that I've been struggling with is like, are you doing enough?
Yeah.
Are you... because some days you're not going to see.
Well, and this is where you got to get outside your head, man. Like
right.
You're not, it's. I was having a conversation with a great guy, and he was just talking about reconciling with his kids. And one, I think he's a fantastic father, but two, that's the metric. That's the one we worry about the most, right? And I said, man, did you teach your kids to be honest, direct, forthright, and candid? And he's like, yeah. I said, but they're lying when they tell you you're a good dad. So they're honest, forthright, candid, and direct with everyone except for you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're only liars when they say, hey, you're a great dad.
Right.
And he's like, huh. Well, like, you got to have the audacity to believe the people. David's a fascinating man in the Bible. He's encouraging, right? Because David will make you feel good about yourself.
100%.
He's a messed up cat.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. But, and I don't, I didn't go to seminary. I could be wrong on this. And but David writes his own death song, right? Very poetic guy. And in his death song, he kind of says, "Hey, God found me faultless, and He blessed me because of my righteousness," right? And because he says it, everyone's like, "Well, he must have written that early," because he couldn't say that with any authenticity towards the end of his days. If you look at what he did, and I disagree with that. I think he wrote it as he was dying. And why I think David could write that is he had the simple audacity to just believe God. And God said, "Hey, if you confess and repent, I forgive you."
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was like, he confessed and he wrote that verse. And from the time he confessed and wrote it, he hadn't sinned again, right? Now, maybe like 45 seconds after that, he thought about boobs or something like that. He said, well, can't write it now, right? It was like Bathsheba. And, but I think David's gift was he just kind of took God literally. And when God says, "Hey, this is it," okay, And if you think about it, like, that's what we really ought to do with the people we love the most. When they tell us the good things, we ought to listen to them, because we listen to them when they tell us the bad things too.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell you positive things. I tell you, you listen when I tell you negative things, but when I tell you positive things, all of a sudden I'm a liar. So I think we have to step out of our own inner dialogue when we're trying to measure effect, especially when we're aggressive, kind of naturally hypercritical people, So I think, have the nerve to believe the people around you when they tell you you're doing a great job.
I love that point. And that's one of the things I struggle with is like when some people say positive things.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said. I always think like,
well, they're just being nice.
Yeah, exactly. Or like,
when have you ever known me to just be nice?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If I give you guys, I don't like doing it. I don't like saying nice things.
Well, that's a good,
it's a good. So when I say nice things to you, you have to believe them, because I'm not particularly enjoying it.
Exactly.
I'm not enjoying saying nice things. It's just easier to be mean.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying nice things, like, I guess so, because I know you don't want to say that.
And saying nice things to someone is also a form of vulnerability. Right?
Yeah.
Like you are putting yourself out there when you say that. So I love that point that you just made, because it makes me, it's a different perspective on it, because it's like, like this person is trying to be genuine with you. They're trying to tell you something positive, and they're trying to help you.
Well, think about that. Like, who are you to tell me I don't mean what I say, right? Like, you get pretty indignant when you tell someone, and they're like, this is my big issue with Amy. I said, "Baby, you look beautiful." And I said, "Hey, listen, don't argue with me. Like I don't want to get in a debate on whether you're beautiful." I'm like, "Yeah, but just say thank you. I don't want to argue with you. Like, I love you. You're beautiful. Just, like, I'm not lying, right?" So, like, I don't like when people question what I'm trying to say. So let people say what they, and believe them, especially if you're running around with truth tellers. If you're running around with truth tellers, all of a sudden they're lying when they say good stuff. That makes sense, right? So.
Right. That's a great point. Or any questions you want to ask me before you?
I felt like I had a good one. And then I also remember I have TBI and ADH and a variety of other acronyms.
Oh, let's talk about TBI real quick.
Yeah.
Will you pledge your brain to Project Enlist?
I think I already did, didn't I?
Why did you pledge your brain? I think you probably did.
I'm not using it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like it ain't doing me any good, and but yeah, man, like, listen, you want to be if you can be of use every day that you're alive, and then continue to be of use afterwards, it's a pretty good gig.
100%.
My kids don't want it.
Right. I'll take it. Let me see.
And I don't mean to sound casual or trivial with the question and the answer, but I mean that's how. Also, the reality is like I'm not using it anymore. Like, just someone gets something out of it.
Right. Yeah, and you also are well versed in the area of brain injuries, and we need a lot more research to be done. And the only way to do research is through brains.
That's it.
So Clint Bruce is here to tell you today.
That's right.
Pledge your brain.
If you want to do pull-ups, how do I get better pull-ups? I don't do pull-ups. How do you get better run?
Right.
How do we learn more about the brain? Look at it.
More brains.
Yeah, more brains.
More brains. Well, brother, thank you as always.
No, man. Hey, listen, I wanted to, I hijacked the whole purpose of this podcast because I know your nature is to think about the next thing. But in order to gain the fuel to do the next thing, you got to reflect upon how far this thing has come since that moment on the couch when I challenged you to put the pain to work. And the result is, I think without question, you have in a way that you should be proud of.
Thank you, brother.
In a way that you should be encouraged by, and even encouraged by more than you're proud of, right? Because who wants to be proud of having to do something like this, right?
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? So, but I do think one of the ways you stay engaged in the fight is you acknowledge effort to date and outcome to date, right? That's how you keep thankful.
And I'll say one thing to kind of wrap it up, but for me to, because you mentioned it, right? Like I wish we never had. We talk about this all the time. I wish 38 challenge is not a thing.
Sure, yeah.
But at the same time, like you have to acknowledge that I've met, like you said, I have stories now and I've met people and have.
It'd be impossible for you to feel alone.
Right, and I am such a better person because of the trauma that's been in my life and because of the 38 challenge, and it has presented me opportunities that I never would have had if my brother didn't die. So when people ask that question, it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're not thankful. Like you're not thankful that your brother's gone, but at the same time, you're thankful for the opportunities that the man that he was and the person that he was presents, because it's going to, when I look at the future of the 38 challenge and the amount of people that's going to impact, I mean, it's like we talked about in the beginning, he can help so many more people by God's side than he can.
I like to frame the answer to those questions in reality. So I look at the thing I can do something about and the thing I can't do something about. So I can't do something about the fact that my dad's gone and your brother's gone, right? So I can do something about what I do with those days that I have that they don't, and what I do with that pain. Is it fuel or is it a great excuse for failure, right? I can do something about that. So I will work to feel good about that which I did that I could do.
And all of this started, to go back, because you asked me how I was doing, and I said I'm doing good, and you said no, you're not.
Yeah.
And you forced me to be vulnerable, and you forced me to confront the issue and to take action on it.
And I did that because I've had guys do it to me. Hey, Clint, you good? Yeah, man, I'm good.
Right.
No, you're not. You're not good. How could you be good? Come here.
Yeah, and that's, to the listeners, that's our challenge, I think, for you, is when someone said, like, don't be afraid to say you're not good.
One of my favorite things to say to people now, and a friend of mine says it all the time. And the first time he said it to me, he just caught me off guard. He's like, how you doing? Good. And he goes, prove it. What? I said, prove it. So now occasionally I'm like, how you doing? Good, man. Prove it. What do you mean prove it?
Yeah.
Prove to me you're doing good.
Yeah, for sure. Why are you doing good? Why? Yeah, or
okay, hold on. Like, and sometimes you can. Like, yeah, here's why I'm doing good. Amy, the girls are great. And also, I'm doing good. Okay, cool. I just wasn't doubting you. I was just saying, prove it.
Right. And then sometimes it could, asking that other question, why are you doing good? Prove it.
If you can't prove it, then
it leads to a better conversation.
Hey, how'd the game go last night? Yeah. Good. Prove it. Well, we won. All right.
That's fair.
Proved it.
Yeah, for sure. But so that I think that's a great point, because we need to be more intentional with when we ask people how they're doing.
I see Lucas over here trashing my studio. Just walk around judging stuff. I don't like your fluorescent light bulbs. You know what? You're an elitist. I don't like. Shut up. I'm joking. Lucas is like, who is this? Who is this large, angry person?
Trust me, he's perfectionist at,
That's awesome.
at what he does, and it annoys me all the time too.
This is good. I'm proud of you, man. That's great.
I love you, brother.
Love you too. It was weird. It was an awkward angle. We pulled it off.
Just what we do. All right, Clint Bruce. Thank you, brother. Next time Clint's on, we're gonna be jumping into a deeper.
You know, the funny thing is I think I already answered the question.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Yeah, because I mean that story doesn't change, and I was honest the first time, right?
Yeah.
So
true. Well, your wisdom is always appreciated, brother.
Thanks, man.
Of course.